welcome back to the Project Local podcast. We're a business storytelling podcast where every business has a story, and we're here to help you tell yours. I'm Reed.
I'm Tanner.
And I'm Carrie.
And if you've been following us along, we'd like to do these podcast episodes to talk a little bit about our experience as business owners and starting Project Local, a local media company here in Hawaii. In this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about something that just happened recently. We got our first client, and we had to put together our first business proposal. And for those of you that are in business, you know that that could be a nerve-wracking experience like it was for us, because we really don't know what to do.
Or where to start.
Yeah, where do you start? I mean, we'll talk a little bit about what our thoughts and feelings were around that, but we want to just catch up a little bit with Tanner. It was the holiday season. These past couple of weeks, we took a few weeks off for Christmas and New Year's. And Tanner, you just came back from a trip.
Yeah, I just came back from Canada, went to Calgary and Banff, and holy jeez, it was cold. Like over here, for reference, it's about like 80 degrees. I think this morning was like kind of cold, like 67.
And that's cold.
That's cold for
and
Hawaii.
that's cold for us
Yes.
here in Hawaii. But Banff was -3 for the longest time. And when I left, it was about -5.
Wow.
So much colder than I'm used to. But it was a great experience overall, and we had a great time. Lots of pictures, lots of video. Definitely a place that I need to go back to. There was so much more that we didn't get to do, and yeah, it was really fun.
And first time in Canada.
First time in Canada, and you know what? One thing I didn't realize is that they don't stamp your passport when you go there.
Oh.
Yeah,
It's
so
kind of sad.
so it was almost like it was for nothing. No, I'm kidding.
So tell us about your takeaways. Like, what did you really enjoy? And maybe it was something that was challenging.
Oh, I mean, just being in a different country, that was a bit different. Like, they have different mannerisms or, like, different ways of doing things. It's pretty similar to the States, but then again, we live here in Hawaii, so, like, when you go to the mainland, it's just different
Very
already.
different in general, yes.
Yeah, but then on top of that, I think one thing that we learned was that the currency, the exchange rate, like, the US dollar is really strong right now. So everything we bought was basically on sale.
Oh, okay,
You know,
okay.
so I think it was like $1 to $1.50 Canadian. So anything we bought automatically discounted. So yeah, that was a great experience. Like just seeing the menu, I mean, like, oh, it's not actually $50.
Everything's so cheap.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
but
deceiving.
yeah. What about you guys? How was your guys' holiday season?
It was good.
It was very busy. I think now that we have 2 children, it's a different experience overall, because we want to make, or for me, I want to make the holidays like a very special and magical experience for our kids. And so I think I feel a little bit more pressure than when we didn't have kids. And then on top of that, it's finding the time to spend with all of our family, because we have so much, which is, we're very grateful for, but it can feel like a lot sometimes. But we had a really nice Christmas and New Year's.
Yeah, this is always a hectic time because, Carrie's family already has a lot of things that they want to involve us in.
Traditional things.
Yeah, that year after year we do with them. My family is the same, except my parents are divorced. So it's like having to spend time, or trying to, as equal as possible with both sides.
Yeah.
And ultimately, somebody has to lose, right? I mean,
It's
not everybody
not
gets
equal.
all of our time because we're so popular. But
So many
but
things.
we do have to struggle with that, which is a blessing, because I realize that not a lot of people have, a lot of family that they can go to, especially if you're living on your own somewhere. But for us, it does create extra stress, and we're tired and everything. But at the end of the day, these things don't end. We still have businesses to run. We still have jobs to go to. And so that's part of being an entrepreneur, right? So it sounds like everybody had a great couple of week break.
Yep, well rested, or for the most part. And yeah, now we're back. And as you mentioned, before we went on holiday break, we did get our first inquiry, our first client, and we had to draw up a proposal.
Yeah.
And for any entrepreneur, drawing up a plan to pitch to the client, you need to really show the value that you can bring to the table, what you can offer to the client, and in the end, what you are going to value and price your product at. And I think that's something that we all kind of learned as going through this.
Yeah, taking a step back though, just to remind our listeners, so Project Local is a media production company, and we're focused on local small businesses here in the state of Hawaii. And we really want to tell their authentic story, whether it's around their start, their owner, their family, their products, anything that's unique about the business. And just through word of mouth and through actually a lot of probably work that Carrie did to lay the groundwork to this, we got our first inquiry about a business, and it's a local business here that's been around for quite a while, and it's in food service, and we won't go into the details for confidentiality, but we do want to talk a little bit about that process of actually getting our first customer. So
I think it started with an email of just an inquiry of wanting to write a blog post about their company. And so I thought that this would be a great experience for Project Local to be involved. And
this was a blog post to your personal blog,
right? This is a blog, yes, at first. And so I was like, wow, perfect timing, because now we have this company where we can offer a more professional service than what I personally could do on my end before we started Project Local. So I was very excited to share with our client that this is possible now. And so we got together, Reed, Tanner, and myself, and we met with the client. And we first, had probably it was just a 30-minute conversation online just to meet him and to see what they wanted for their business. How can we help them? And to really get to know them and, basically what it is, how we can service them.
So when you're starting out, obviously we don't have a lot of exposure, right? So it's within our personal networks of the things that we're doing, either individually or collectively, that kind of drive interest in all this. For a typical entrepreneur, getting your first client is a really big deal because it's hard enough to put together the business. It's even harder to sell yourself out there, right? And so we got excited because we had interest. But if at that point, like you were saying, Carrie, wasn't interest in Project Local, so to speak, it was interest in more what Carrie Tyra's brand could do for this business. But ultimately, talking to him about our venture with Project Local, I think that's what kind of interested the owner into some of the other services we could provide. But Tanner, what's your, take on this? Because this is our first client. I know we had gotten really excited to put this together, but it is really hard and difficult for a business to get that first interest.
Yeah. Now, when we were putting together, or when we initially had the conversation with the client, it was really finding out what their needs were. And we are so often kind of put into or have the idea of, oh, I can do this for you, I can do this for you, I can also do that. But at the end of the day, if the client is not interested in any of that, then they're not going to sign with you. And that's kind of something that we had to take a step back and be like, hold up, did they actually ask for that? Or are we just trying to throw everything and the kitchen sink at them? And I think what we realized was, hey, the client literally said what they wanted, and we had to take that step back and put a proposal together that's really spoke to those needs. Yeah. And at the end of the day, I think that we came together and put together a proposal that really kind of hit those right on the head. With some product photography, with some of the behind the scenes and like the vlog. And this particular client was not really interested in some of the other services that we had, which were fine. And I think at the end of the day, this is going to be a really good experience.
Yeah, so let's take a step back, because what I heard you say was probably one of the first and foremost the most important things when you're putting a proposal together. It's really what does the client need and how are you going to fulfill it? Because as business owners, you have your idea of what you can provide, right? Like, I know these are the services that I've crafted that I know I can provide at great value to your business. But through the discovery process, you don't realize that, what you're trying to do is push your services, right? But the client might have some other different needs that you're not uncovering. Yeah. So I think that was important in this as a lesson for us, as probably the first and primary lesson is just because you have an idea of what your business can provide does not mean that that's what the client wants at the end of the day, right? And we're not a widget type of business where we're selling a product, so to speak, a physical product. We're selling a service, and so we have to create that service need. I'm sorry, we're going to have to create a solution around that need for the service, right? What did you see?
I saw that. I also that's a sorry.
It's okay.
I think, after talking with the client as well, I was actually very surprised that the services that we initially thought people would love, not necessarily were the ones that he wanted right away. And so it was a good lesson, because I think for me, I needed to really listen in on what he wanted and to take that in. And so listening and flexibility were two things that I think we learned right off the bat. But then when it came to putting the proposal together, then I think one thing that we had to really figure out was like, so what is our value? What is our worth? How much would we even charge for this stuff? And then, I don't know, maybe we can go into talking about that.
Yeah, when we created the business, we didn't have like a menu, so to speak, of these are services and this is what it's going to cost. I think, like most businesses, you think about, okay, what's my overhead, right? Yeah. Like, what are my expenses that it's going to cost me out of pocket to be able to put together these types of services? And then from there, you kind of layer in your pricing on top of that. Well, we're fortunate because I think our advantage is we're very small. We don't have employees, so to speak. So we actually have very low overhead when it comes to this kind of stuff.
And like one of the big parts of kind of figuring out what that cost is going to be to the business is like the time, for example. And as you said, because we don't have employees necessarily, we don't have to worry about the hourly rate, about insurance, all that kind of stuff, or a brick and mortar store. Yeah. It's really about how much time we want to put in and how much we want to charge for our time as of right now. And I think I don't want to speak for you guys, but as of right now, I'm kind of all right with doing things at a discount or even for free, just to get our name out there, to get in those repetitions. Doesn't mean that we are discounting our services, but it's doing the service for free to get our name out, to show what we are capable of. And I think even though that's not the approach that we're doing right now, we did that initially, and that's kind of what led to this client inquiry.
So there are different schools of thought that I've researched online when it comes to pricing, because that argument of, okay, I'm going to discount my services, I'm going to do things for free sometimes to be able to get visibility and have people hire you, right, is one way. But the argument against that I've heard is that once you discount your services or give things away for free, there's no value behind it.
People expect it.
Right? There's no value, and people are expecting a certain type of quality when that happens, versus the other school of thought would be, I'm going to price appropriately to what the market drives this service, and I'm going to do the work that's going to stand up to that quality. The hard part at that is you immediately start competing against everybody else in that sphere, right?
Yeah, and then you have other people who already have a portfolio, you have like a brand reputation, a name out there already, and now you're coming here with nothing to show. And that's kind of why like a lot of the big creators and photographers that I like to follow on social media, they're big advocates for doing work for free initially. And then once you start to get your brand out there and your name, they like to go by, you either do it for full price or for free. There's no in between. Because it's either I'm doing this to make money. All in, I'm doing this, either all in, or I'm just doing it as a favor, and it's either to get more eyes on me, it's either to make money, or it's either to get experience. And those are the only three reasons why you would do a service for free or charge full price.
This is different from like the employee mindset, because right, the employee mindset is I do and I get. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like I'm going to put out a certain amount of work and you're going to pay me for what that work is, what that work or time is, right? But Carrie, like in your experience, because you've been a content creator now for probably a lot longer than Tanner and I, when you talk about services and the time that you put into it, essentially you're not getting paid. Right? When you first start off, you're doing things for free for yourself. But as you start to gain traction momentum, you have a decent following, right? Then all of a sudden, does your mindset shift? Like, okay, well, I need to get paid for these things, or I need to like start charging for some of my services.
I think exactly your mindset does shift, and it for me and in my experience, the YouTube page and the channel, that was always a side gig, and it was always just more for fun and to capture memories. So I never expected any kind of financial gain from that at first.
When you started,
when
you're
I
right.
started, right? But and even for us now, I think now that everybody has a full-time job. Well, Tanner and Reed do. I watch.
You have a full-time job.
I have a full-time job. I take care of our children.
It just pays minimum wage.
Exactly. But I think, knowing that and knowing where we're at, right? So because we're also like, we're making money doing something else, we can, what am I trying to say?
There's less pressure.
There's less pressure right now. Like, we don't have to charge like, an arm and a leg right now for the services that we can provide. But when I started YouTube, yes, I think it was more for fun and, just because I wanted to. And it still is like that, it's still not like a full-time gig, but I do now, I do have, what am I trying to say? Like I get, not that I get paid a little bit, but
No, I mean, you set yourself up with different streams of income, whether it be affiliate income, whether it be sponsor income, whether you're doing things as like a trade-off, like some of the videos you make for like Foodland, right? It's like a trade-off for a gift card. Yeah. So in a sense, you're getting compensated in some way, shape, or form, but it's probably not to the level that we want it.
Of course, and I think that as we get older too, and our time is just more precious now that I have kids and there's just less time to do this, then I know that my services can't always be for free anymore. There has to be some kind of compensation back because our time is so limited.
Yeah. And a business like ours takes up a lot of time, right? And ultimately, Tanner, I think the bulk of that responsibility falls on you with the editing of the content and the distribution of the content. And we thank you for that. And that's why when we do get paid, you will be compensated well for this. But talk a little bit about that, because when we put together a proposal like this for a new client, like, what are you thinking in your head around like the time I need to spend doing these things?
Yeah, I mean, initially it is exactly how much time is going to be spent on site, how much time is going to be spent behind the computer, how much time is going to be spent doing research and pre-production, Before doing this, at least for the jobs that I used to do, there was no like, I need to research the history, I need to research the story that we're going to tell. It was point the camera at the subject and shoot, and that was all that was required. So now coming into this pre-production space where we are doing all this upfront information and research, that's something that's, okay, what is that worth? Or is that just already included in the price that we set? So that was something that I had to learn. But I can speak more towards the time spent on location and the editing side. On location you have normally an hourly rate or a day rate, depending on how long the shoot lasts, what your prices are, what is required from the shoot, And generally the way I like to see it is, especially if it's like a job that, like, what's your get out of bed price?
Okay.
It's like, what is the price tag that has to be charged for me to go out, like, get out of the bed and go out the door, And I have my hourly rate and then the project rate.
Okay.
And for me, that's kind of been set at about either what I make currently at my other job, or it needs to be like 1.5 that. There's another way of approaching it, but as like, what's like how many years of experience you have, how much your equipment costs, and you factor all that in, and that provides your hourly or your project rate. So I think the way that we kind of landed on it was, what does other professionals charge, as well as keeping in mind that we are a new service, we are a new business, so we can't charge an arm and a leg or premium prices. And it's also how much do we want to charge for us to feel like it's worth it. What is our quote unquote get out of bed price? On top of that, it's the time spent behind the computer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so we have the editing for the video, we have the photography for that, and typically because like photos are pretty quick, we can kind of wrap that into the per photo price or to a bulk price, and the price that we kind of settled on was kind of competitive to other studios in our area, but also to the experience that we can bring to the table.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when pricing out for this particular proposal, I wasn't there in the full conversation because I was taking care of the children. But did you incorporate like the cost of your equipment? I'm just curious.
In this one, we did not. We did not include the price of equipment. We kind of just wanted to focus on what is our services that we are providing, period. You know, I think that if we had to rent any equipment or purchase any equipment from what we have right now, then we would have included that, you know, especially if the client says, oh, I want this filmed in 8K.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, one camera that I have films in 8K, you know, so if we had to get other cameras, then we would definitely build that towards the client because the expectation has been set.
Yeah.
And now we are getting the equipment to fulfill that. We're going to pass that along to the customer.
So one thing I think we haven't talked about yet is the fact that we all came into this company with some equipment.
Yes.
So that's something that, you know, when we started this business, like I had a little bit of stuff, but Tanner definitely has the bulk of what we use, and he has the most professional equipment. But I think it does make a difference, you know, when you start a business like this.
Yeah, we were very fortunate that like we don't have to start from scratch. Like imagine us trying to start this business from nothing. You know, no cameras, no lights, no lenses,
no computers,
right? And I think that when starting a business, budgeting is a big part of it, and that does play hand in hand with what a proposal looks like. Because if we had to start from scratch, then the bill to the client would have to be much higher. Yeah. Luckily, I feel that most of the equipment that I do have has already been paid off by the jobs I've done on the side. So we're not necessarily in debt or paying any of these things off or having to put a portion of our proposal to the principal debt, you know, like we're very fortunate in that sense. But moving forward, there is a lot more equipment that we would like to purchase later down the road to enhance the quality of our content, to give a better experience to the customer. So later on, as we start putting together more proposals, we're going to have to start figuring out like, hey, how much do we want to pad into this project to pay for equipment down the road?
And what you guys are talking about is a barrier to entry.
Yeah.
Because a business like ours, because it's so tech driven, if you don't have the financial means to be able to provide those resources for your business, you start off behind the 8 ball. That's what prevents a lot of people from getting into the space in the first place. But what people don't realize is that also helps or hurts your pricing. Because in our case, we're able to offer pricing that's a lot more competitively priced. But in some other people's cases, because of the cost to enter into the space, you might be starting behind the 8 ball when it comes to how you're paying for some of the equipment that you're using. Thus, you're going to pass along some of that to the client, which drives prices up. It's the same as any retail, merchandising, right? Types of businesses where your cost of production ultimately is going to get passed down to the consumer. So in our case, we're fortunate where we don't have that type of overhead, so we can actually undercut ourselves probably when you think about the cost of our time and the cost of our resources. But I want to go back to what you're talking about with the get out of bed pricing, because that's the first time I ever heard that statement. And that's actually really interesting. Yeah, because if you think about like if somebody has a normal 8 to 5 job, right? Yeah. What's your get out of bed price? Well, basically it's whatever your job is paying you.
Yes.
And even then, not a lot of people want to get out of bed for that, right? Because most people are not compensated well for what they do. Now you're talking about, I have my own company, I have my own business, right? So what is going to drive me to go and do something in that business on a day-to-day basis? Yeah. But before you go into that, I want to throw this at you, because as entrepreneurs, you don't get paid for every single thing that you do. It's not a one-to-one.
No.
So in that sense, what is your get out of bed price? You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not getting paid for everything that you do.
So
That's really
so sometimes it really has to do with, is the job worth it? Like, because in the entrepreneur space, it's okay, you have to figure out the cost, you have to figure out what it's going to do for your reputation, for your experience,
Yeah.
for your portfolio, you know. So going back to like my typical 9 to 5, we are lucky that we get to pick sometimes, hey, is this job going to be worth it? Stuff like travel expenses, stuff like the size of the client that we're working with, you know, what's their historical buy rate, you know, like what is, how many, like what percent of the business, the team is going to purchase stuff. And from that we figure out, okay, is this job going to like most likely be successful, or is it going to fail? And from there, our quote unquote get out of bed rate is this going to break even or open more doors for us?
Okay.
You know, but for personal stuff, it's like, okay, it's a Saturday morning, and or like the shoot is scheduled for a Saturday or something, or it's not even scheduled yet. They're thinking about a Saturday. I'm super tired. Okay, is it worth it for me to give up my Saturday morning to do other things, to spend time with family, to, you know, spend time with friends, or work on my other projects for $100 for like 3 hours? No, it's not worth it for me, you know. But if I say, okay, you know what, I don't want to do this for $100, but if I can charge $500 or even $900 to give up my Saturday morning, you know what, that is worth it for me, because now that opens up more doors, like substantial doors for me. Either that's new equipment, or that's, you know, putting stuff on the side for savings, or if it's a client that I want to work with that will open up new opportunities. Let's say it's a business owner, you know, they own several stores. You know what, I don't mind doing it for free. Let's say it's a friend. That get out of bed price is zero. It's zero, because it's opportunity. You know, so that's the way that I like to put it. Maybe it's still not the best way of going about business necessarily, but for like a very small time creator, photographer, you know, that's kind of the way that I heard a lot of people do it. And yeah,
it's valuing your time, and it's different because I have to shift my mentality as I'm listening to you talk around. To me, valuing my time is like, I'm going to output something, you're going to compensate me for that. But like we're kind of talking about with what you're saying is, a lot of the times as a creator, you're putting something out there. You don't know when that compensation is going to come back.
Yeah.
Right. Especially if it's not a contract. It's not a set handshake deal where someone's going to pay you or cut you a check when you get there. Right. So a lot of times you're doing these things for free, or you're doing things because you want the exposure, and you're hoping that down the road it's going to benefit you. And so therefore your get out of bed price is different. That, I think, is the hardest mindset shift for most people, going from I have a job to now I own a business.
It's called delayed gratification.
It is. But ultimately, if you're an employee and you're trying to shift into being an owner, you don't have that.
You don't have
because
that.
I'm getting gratification immediately.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things you're talking about, Tanner, makes me think about probably the hardest shifts when somebody is starting a business is getting out of that employee mindset to become an owner, where now all of a sudden you're not getting compensated one for your time or your effort. And that's something I have a hard time with, because I've never had a business, right? So even as a creator, I would think it's even more difficult, because it's not like you create a product and someone buys your product.
No.
Right? You create a product and you're hoping that somewhere down the line your product is accepted and other people want you to create that product more.
Well, it's even like the initial, can you create the product for us? Like it's not like you go out and you film. I mean, some people do this where they go out, they get a bottle of whiskey, let's say, they shoot the content already, and then they go to the business and say, hey, I made this content for you. Do you want it?
Oh, so they spend all those time and all the hours.
Exactly. So that's the other way. But then what we're kind of talking about now is the business, the client approaches and says, can you make the content for us? You know, but like in the space I worked on previously wasn't necessarily like that. It was like the family shoots, or like the friends of friend kind of stuff. And what is that price to say yes to it? We're gonna kind of run into that with smaller businesses that don't have a marketing budget,
Yes.
don't have a plan set up, because they're going to be like, hey, can you do this shoot for us? We saw what you did for X business. Can you do that for our business now? But our budget is only $100, you know? And for us, we're going to have to take a look at that and say, hey, does that meet our get out of bed price? Or is it worth it to do it because it's a known brand and it's going to push our reputation forward? Or
is there benefit later on?
Exactly. You know, and some people say, hey, you know what? It's your responsibility as the creative to now educate the business to say, hey, you know what? I know that you came to us with $100 budget. Our services in the industry are valued at this. It's almost your responsibility to keep the price, to keep the value of the industry at this certain level, or you do it as a complete favor, absolute zero, because you don't want a discount, as you said.
That's true. Carrie, you had some concerns when we put this together, because I think you were worried about our, I guess, pricing being accepted by the client.
Yes.
Right. So talk a little bit about that, because I think most businesses that do these types of services that have to put out a price for their services, that's probably the big apprehension. It's like, we're going to email you this and we're going to hope it's going to meet your budget and your needs.
I think maybe it's just a confidence thing, you know, because I felt a little apprehensive, just like, well, what if they don't want this price and then we lose a client because they were like, oh, that's too high. And I think because we don't know exactly what somebody will pay, right? Then for me, I was just scared. And I think that's why at first I suggested, why don't we give them like tiers? Like you have a, you know, like an A tier, a B tier, a C tier. But, you know, in talking with both Tanner and Reed, we figured we'll just put one price and we'll see that, like, our strongest offer, and we'll see what happens with that. And which is another way of doing it. But I think for me, that was like a safety net, because then you kind of give 3 options and maybe they'll take the less option if they feel like the other 2 are too expensive or something.
And I think for us, our goal essentially is to create long form YouTube videos out of our experiences that we could use and put on our YouTube channel that will become at some point another revenue source for us. Yeah. So when you and I were discussing the pricing, I think you brought it up where it's like, well, what if the guy doesn't choose the long form YouTube video?
Yeah.
Then how does that hurt us in the long run?
Yeah. And then we kind of decided that almost doing the YouTube video for free, because in the end it's going to benefit us. You know,
that was our get out of bed price.
Well, because now we are growing our subscriber subscriber base.
Exactly. And then we kind of looked at, going back to what we said initially, is listening to what the client actually wants, you know? And it wasn't necessarily the long form video.
Yeah.
That's true. Yes.
It was the other services that we had to offer. But it would kind of be unfair to the client and to us to put that long form YouTube video in the package and say, we're charging you for this,
when they don't really want
they don't really want it. And what we kind of decided to go with is we wanted to put the services in photography, the short form video, for social media. That's the stuff that they wanted. And to say, we're gonna do this, and that's valued at this, but we're also going to film this long form video for us. And if you want to use it later down the road, feel free to. But this video is going to be for our use, for us. We're not charging you for it. We're charging you for the services that you want, but this is what we're also going to do on the back end.
Okay, so we wanted to briefly talk a little bit about what goes into a proposal, because I think that's important for somebody starting off. If you don't know how to write one, please use your resources around you. We did. But basically what we wanted to do is keep it simple, because when you're working with an entrepreneur, they're busy and they have a bunch of things getting thrown at them. So the more complex you make these proposals, I think, in my opinion, it probably doesn't get read. It probably gets glossed over a lot of important parts. So for us, we created a proposal that was very basic. We talked a little bit about the objectives for the project. And like Tanner was saying, this comes from listening to your owner, right? So what do they want? And then putting that into the proposal as like parts of what we can deliver. From there, we are a media company, so we wanted to put together the strongest media package that we could. And so, like Carrie was saying, we put our best foot forward with the best price. We discounted some things that we felt we could provide value to, because selfishly we want the gratification of being able to use that content later. But we came up with a package price that we felt was fair based on the owner's budget and based on what we thought was fair based on our time and service. And we put that out there. We also detailed within that package what exactly the owner is going to get in each part of that service.
How it's going to benefit them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's all about like, how are we putting the benefit back to the business and what we're doing. And then lastly, why choose us, right? Like the important part here is like, there are multiple ways that they could probably get this thing done, including doing it themselves. So why would you need a company like us to be able to do it for you? And I think that's the difference here is like, we talked about our expertise in the industry, working with local businesses already, putting together content that's yours, that you want, not content that we think is valuable. And then also comprehensive, right? We want to put this all together, make it easy for you so that you can just take this content and put it out there in your socials or on your website and get your business visible. So that's basically what we did. And Carrie emailed over the proposal day or two before New Year's Eve. And we are currently in the process of waiting for that response back from the owner. He said he needed some time to think it through. But we're not in a rush because his deliverable was not for a couple of months.
Yeah.
So I think for us, we got that first one off our back. And now we got to go out and get more.
Yep.
So hopefully you learned a little bit about writing a business proposal, some of the things that we're tackling with our first one, our challenges. And then, also as a new entrepreneur, don't get discouraged when it comes to this point, because the exciting part is getting the first sale, right? And this is our opportunity to go ahead and do that. So as always, thank you guys for listening to Project Local and our business podcast. You can reach out to us at any of our socials, but please visit our YouTube page at Project Local. We also have our projectlocalhigh.com website that you can go and visit us if you have any needs or your business wants to consult with us over some of the content that we can provide. Please feel free to reach out. You can reach us at projectlocal808@gmail.com. Thank you guys for listening.